So usually before a game, I'd be really, really nervous. I'd be one of them blokes who'd be dry reaching in buckets and walking around punching locker doors and just trying to get myself up, hopefully, to get blokes around me up. But this rainy day in Sydney, waking up at Brighton Le Sands, seeing it pouring down that rain, and I used to hate playing in the rain. This day I had this kind of calm across myself because I knew that I'd been given a green light by the powers that be to run amok in an Origin game, and that I don't think it has ever been done before. And so I went out with Geyer and tried to take any maroon with me.
Including Paul Hoff.
Well, Paul Hoff was an interesting one because I actually missed him. I tried to get him. I tried to shoulder charge him, but if you see the footage of it, Paul Hoff was about 6'7" as a fullback, and as I got to him, he was at my bicep height. So he'd slipped and I'd slipped, and I went through the shoulder charge. It looked like I'd tried to elbow him in the jaw, but I didn't. I said to the judiciary, if I hit him in the jaw, his head would have been in the third row of the grandstand. I was that angry. And then all of a sudden the Queenslanders ran at me, and the late great Peter Jackson was calling me names, and then the half-time explosion happened. Steve Waters ran the ball up, and I said, well, this is it. This game's in the, it's teetering one way or the other. Someone's got to do something to make it explode, and I picked myself as that bloke. And Steve Waters ran the ball up, and he'd done a voluntary tackle, and I said, man, come on, it's Origin. And I gave him a rabbit chop to the back of the head, as you do in Origin, I thought. And next minute, all hell broke loose. Andrew G and me are trading blows, and then out of the corner of my eye, I heard this person calling out my name in a derogatory manner. Guy this, guy that. And when I looked, it was Wally Lewis, and the first thing I thought was that, shit, Wally Lewis knows my name. I couldn't believe it. So he said to the referee, Dave Manson, that he should be in jail, and this bloke's come out to try and maim people. He's not playing footy, which to a certain degree was correct, but I was also having a pretty good game. Like I was doing my share of the hit-ups and tackles, and so he got between us, and Benny Elias is in the middle of me and Wally, and with his hands apart, and David Manson saying, you got to tell him to settle down, and he's saying, OK, mate, settle down. And when David Manson would look away, he said, hit him right now. I'm going, what do I do? So I was betwixt and between. It was Wally Lewis, who to me was Origin. I watched him since 1980 and went, wow, this is surreal. Me and the king here I am, I'm 22 or 23, and I've got the best player in the world in front of me, who's at the end of his career. I'm about to start mine, and should I throw a punch? And all these things are going through my head. I didn't. I'm probably glad I didn't throw a punch, because I don't think we'd be talking about that incident some 26 years later, because it was the fact that I think Wally showed me a bit of respect as well, meant a lot to me as well.
Your dad was 17, your mum's 16. If we were to look at images of you as a young boy, describe that kid to us.
I was a mummy's boy. I was, there's our house of Wayland in the Mount Druitt suburbs where I grew up. I was the oldest of 4 kids. There's me and my sister Jodie on a bike that was probably a hand-me-down that we always used to get. There's Dad with his gangster mo, and I love my family. And it's I just say the word family, and I get emotional. It's so much so that when I was trying out for under 19s rep side, they got my name wrong, and they called me Nick Geyer. And I was 17 at the time, and they said that I've no chance to make the possibles probables, and Mum would follow me everywhere. They both worked 2 jobs just to put a roof over our head, a rental property, a housing commission house. When they called my name out wrong, I looked at Mum and she was crying, and I said, Mum, what are you crying for us? She goes, they don't even know your name, how are you going to make the team? And I said, that's a damn good point. And I made 2 tackles that day, Shero, in that possibles probables game, and back when you could shoulder charge, and 2 blokes got carried off. And Tim Sheens come over to me, he was the first grade coach, who was watching the Jersey Flag trials, and said, what's your name? I said, well, it's not Nick, that's for sure. And he said, no, blah, blah, we spoke, and he said, how about playing under 23s this year? And I suppose when you come from what I came from, and that was a pretty you know, Mount Druitt was a pretty hard suburb back in them days, and every job I applied for when I left school, every apprenticeship, I got knocked back because I think of where I came from. They saw 2770 and they basically brushed me. And I think that kind of stilled my steely resolve as a footballer came from that. You know, I had the hardship, and I pulled upon that in I wanted to be the most aggressive player on the field when I played, and most times I was.
When you were that tall, skinny kid playing juniors, was there a little bit of pressure, or did you feel that you needed to fulfil the role of an intimidator?
Never as a kid. No. I actually thought about giving the game away as a 15-year-old because I had about a 6 or 7 inch growth spurt in 1 year. I went from 14 to 15, and I went from 5'8" to 6'4", and you could tell because my cricket whites were like that. You know, up around my knees, and Mum couldn't believe it, but I felt like a baby giraffe.
Yeah.
I couldn't fit in my own skin for a while, and then I was going to give the game away, and I went to play with a 3rd division side who ended up being in 1st division at St Mary's, and I put a pair of shoulder pads on for the first time and played in the back row and grew into what I am now. I felt comfortable in being a forward, and for the first time I felt comfortable trying to injure other players. If that sounds, you know, it doesn't sound too bad.
That was your job.
Well, even as a 17-year-old, you kind of don't think about trying to hurt other players, but when it is your job and that bloke wants your spot, you know, obviously you shake hands after a game, and there's never been a feud that I've carried on after a game. As soon as you get across that white line, you shake hands and go and have a beer. But as a young bloke, it wasn't until my growth spurt had stopped at the height I am now, and I got put in the forwards, that I kind of come to grips with, okay, I can tackle pretty hard, so I might as well use it.
At 21, you were picked for Origin, but Jack Gibson, no less, the coach. And Queensland were on a bit of a tear at that time. What did you feel about that?
Without being egotistical, I thought I'd make the first team because I was in good form in '89. I played every game that year. You know, I looked so young there, and I was actually crapping myself. That's probably the best run I've done in the game. Apart from everything else, I actually thought I had a shocking game. You know, we got steamrolled by G Miles, and we got beat 36-6.
A lot of people say it goes like a blur.
Yeah,
it goes past you so quickly.
I looked up at the clock and I went, that 10 minutes went quick, and it was, 38 minutes had gone. There was 2 minutes before half time, and it did. I never thought I'd play Origin again. I was lucky enough to be 91 to get the opportunity again.
MG, in the 1980s, when we used to go out to Penrith, the players used to thank us for going out there and often ask us why we were there. It was, I guess, a coming of age, wasn't it? And a coming out of the woodwork at the end of the 1980s when things started to really click. You're
right. Before the motorways were out there, used to go up the Great Western Highway. It was the only way to get in and out of Penrith. And there's no M4 or M7 or M2 or M5. But it was Timmy Sheens had set up a really good junior base of players. And then Ron Willie came in 1988 and brought along with him a couple of tough hombres in Peter Kelly and Chris Mortimer, who the local juniors of Penrith kind of went, "Oh, these blokes." One day Chris Mortimer pulled a pin out of his hand to play in a major semi-final, and we were on the understanding that no team could beat us in a fight with Peter Kelly in our team because he was the toughest bloke we played with.
In 1990, losing that grand final, did that, I guess, school you for the next one?
Looking back now, in our instance in Penrith, we definitely had to lose one before we won one. We celebrated making it the grand final like we'd won one. We had civic receptions, we had parades down the main street, we had shirts made up, we went to the grand final breakfast 3 nights before the grand final and got blind drunk. Like Gus Gould knocked on the door at 3 in the morning and we were all hiding behind lampshades and curtains, It's like you couldn't take the boy out of Penrith type situation. We didn't know what grand finals were like. We didn't know that you go down and you had to, behave. Because we'd go on a drink every Thursday night and that was how we kind of had our mateship.
But the postscript to the 90 grand final was a kangaroo tour for you. You didn't expect to go on that tour. How did it change you, again, as the callow youth from Penrith who really hadn't stepped into the world that much, had you?
No, I'd never heard of Carcassonne. Thought it was an animal on a farm or something. You know, it's when you go to France and Leeds, and you have 2 months in Leeds. I had my birthday in France, made my test debut at Avignon. It kind of made the four of us who went away in that 1990 loss appreciate exactly what we had. We knew we were good enough to be picked with the best players in the game on a long tour. We knew that we had the same ability as them, and we kind of broke down a lot of walls and stereotypes that we'd kind of built up ourselves about other teams and players.
Bob Fulton brought you into his test team to play New Zealand. It's 1991. You've played in that wild Origin series. You're on your way to a grand final. It couldn't have got much better, could it, at that stage of your career?
No, 91 was obviously my best year as a rugby league player. As far as rep honours came, I made City of Origin, I made State of Origin, I made my test debut against the Kiwis. Yeah, look, to pull on the jersey, the green and gold it's up there. I remember being in the dressing room before the game, and Bobby Fulton actually came up and gave me my jersey, and he said, "You've earned it." You know, it's they'd been beaten in Test 1 in Melbourne, so it was kind of out with the old, in with the new, and blokes like myself and I think Laurie Daly and Benny Elias or Kerrod Walters, one of them was vice versa. Craig Salvatore, Brad Clyde, we made our debuts together. He wasn't really much of so forth a coach. Bobby Fulton, he was a great manager. You know, just a bit like Mal Meninga, I would imagine. You know, he knew exactly what button to press. He knew exactly when to press it, and he did it on the Kangaroo Tour with me and Mark Carroll. He'd get us in the dressing room, in his room, and call us down. He'd go, "Smash and crash. This is what I want you to do against Wakefield tonight," and we would do it. We were, "Yes, boss, yes, sir." You know, it was a really good time in my life. Playing again with your idols in an Australian jersey, it doesn't get much better.
1991, for the second year in a row, you find yourself behind Canberra in a grand final, and then you get yourself sin-binned. Not a good moment, was it?
No, not when you think you've blown it for your team. You know, when you know that I'm winning the comp with my team, and I walked up the race to sulk, and Gus Gould walked behind me and just said, "Mate, you got 30 minutes 30 minutes to go. You know, come on, it's a long time in footy." And so I come back on with 20 minutes to go, and we're still 12-6 down, and the score hadn't changed, but our players kind of they had a breath of fresh air once I ran on the forwards in particular, who, you know, Paul Dunn and Paul Clark and Barry Walker and Royce Simmons and Johnny Cartwright, and they'd all done the defence of me, and so I had to go out and make amends, and I did.
You're involved in all 3 tries. For a so-called hit merchant, that's not bad, is it?
Well, I told you I had the ability. I was used to be a 5'8" man, come on. That feeling there when the siren rings and you realise that you've won a competition for your fans, more importantly, for your teammates and for your family. It's just one of them things that, you know, you've put yourself on the map forever. There's only going to be the first time that someone from Penrith wins the comp, and I was one of them people to say I did. Amazing feeling you get as a sportsman when you win that. It's so hard to do. You know, when you see some of the best players in the world who haven't done it, and you feel sorry for them because they haven't experienced that feeling.
So you've never been happier. You're the kings at the foot of the mountains. You're young and you're invincible and you're having a great time, and then you lose Ben Alexander. Yeah,
that's part of the whole Penrith story, isn't it? You know, it's who would have known. We always lament and wish that things didn't happen. And you see, even seeing, you know, how my kids now, and seeing Ben in them, and Brandy's kids, Megan's other brother and sister, and their kids, and you see Ben in all of them, and yeah, it was so sad. He was 20. You know, I've got a 22-year-old boy now, and any person watching this interview losing your son at 20, you know how bad that would feel when you lose someone who was the next superstar of Penrith as far as rugby league goes. It rocked the whole place for a long, long time. I reckon probably a good 6 or 7 years, yeah. It rocked the place.
When did the morning and the fallout, when did it cease to be morning and begin to get destructive?
We had cameras parked outside of Brandy's house for about a month. Just wanting, we had nightly vigils at Greg's house, just, campfires. We couldn't believe what had happened. And then Brandy said, we've got to get out of here. So we kind of went to, me and a few other mates, we flew to the Greek Islands, a place called Eos. Stayed there for 2 weeks, and when we come back, it kind of quietened down a bit. But no, then the morning really kicked into place, because then it was all pretty real.
Yeah, you went off and played for your minor, didn't you?
I went and played for Balmain first. Had a year at Balmain in '93. I had after Ben's accident, I had the rest of the year off, and I think as did Brandy, and Brandy then went to the Warriors in '95, and I went to Auckland Warriors, and I went to the Perth Western Reds. But I went from playing for my city, state, and country, and to playing for your minor, which is I'm not nothing bad against your minor.
Yeah.
No, but I was up there, and it was all surreal. It was all surreal. It rocked a lot of people, and it still rocks us to this day. Every time an anniversary comes up, or a birthday, it's there's not much you can say, except it's very sad.
How important was it to you that you got your career back on the rails at Penrith? You finished your career with honour. As I guess, and it may be a little bit cliched, anyway, Ben would have wanted you to do that.
I think that's the only way that you can put it, Sharo, that I had to get back. I burned a lot of bridges in my destructive years there. Once Ben passed away, I burnt a lot of bridges that I never thought I'd mend. And then when I was playing for the Western Reds it was about October '97, and we got the word through that the Reds were folding, and basically the Melbourne Storm was starting the next year. They wanted most of the players, and they didn't want me. So I rang Simo Royce, who was now coach at Penrith. I was 30 at this stage, and said, mate, look, I want to come home and finish my career off at Penrith, even if it's for a year, just to. And he said, yeah, okay. He said, we haven't got much money left. I said, I don't need that much money. I'm still on Super League cabbage, so I'm loaded. But they helped me out of a jam Super League. Even though it disrupted the game for a while, I basically didn't have a wage for 3 years. Went to Perth, came back and played 3 good years at Penrith. Not my best by a long way, but I got the chance to be a mentor then to blokes like Tony Pullator and Frank Pullator and Reece Wesser and Ned Kadich, and blokes who I actually loved as younger brothers.
Does your relationship with Greg really mean that you have 2 brothers in the NRL?
Oh, definitely. Brandy is my brother. Ben was my brother. Peter, Brandy's other brother, is my brother. Megan's sister, Linda, is my sister. We're very close families, the Geyers and the Alexanders. And that's something that I think we came from very similar backgrounds, both from housing commission areas, and the way we've grown up with each other is one of a brotherhood.
Breakfast radio.
Yeah.
25 years ago, no one would have backed you to get home for breakfast, let alone be on breakfast radio.
I wouldn't have got home for breakfast. I wasn't getting home for breakfast. My coach would
But this is another Mark Geyer, isn't it?
Well, this is the other side where you've got to basically have a career for 5 kids and a wife.
Yeah.
I still live in Penrith at the same house that I've had since 1992. My kids still love Penrith. A holiday for us is Terrigal. we love it. We're Westies. We love being where we are, and we sometimes being on breakfast radio, I've got a voice for the people where I live. I don't think there's many other people from my neck of the woods who are on radio at the moment, so I can really be a heartbeat and a voice for people who live west of Parramatta or west of Strathfield, because I'm passionate about the area. And the older I get, I'm 50 this year, so the older I get, the more I'm interested in local issues, you know, and the more I'm interested in stuff that the kids are doing and issues that affect me and are going to affect my kids.
50 this year, that's going to be a good party.
You want to come?
Love to, thank you.
You won't be able to handle it, brother. No, you can come. You can, yeah, I know, 50. It's 1967 I was born and the Panthers were born the same year. So, you know, it's something that, again, 25 years ago, people mightn't have thought I would have got the 50. You know, I was burned the candle at both ends. And I was a party boy for a long time, but I never really hurt anyone but myself. You know, I was always self-destructing in some sort of way. But again, the one constant's been my wife. Without her, like, who knows where I'd be.
If the next 50 years are half as fascinating and interesting as the past 50, it'll be a hell of a good time. Thanks for being on League Legends, mate. It's been a lot of fun.
Good on you, Geyer. Pleasure, brother.
Oh, Geyer and Lewis. Gets over top and goes out to celebrate with the crowd.
This has been a Fox League production, part of the Fox Sports Network.